Kenya's newly re-elected President Uhuru Kenyatta has urged the opposition to avoid violent protests and to take any complaints they have about the election to court. Kenyatta also urged police to use restraint in dealing with protests since the election results were announced. And we go back to Beatrice in Nairobi now for more on post-election Kenya.
Indeed, Yao Yang, it's been a long week last week for many Kenyans, and in Nairobi, many Kenyans have reported to work, ignoring the opposition's call to stay away. Opposition leader Raila Odinga is disputing the outcome of last week's elections, which saw him lose to incumbent President Uhuru Kenyatta. Now, in the wake of the announcement, protests broke out in the opposition strongholds. Kenya's Human Rights Commission says 24 people have been killed countrywide during post-election violence. However, on Tuesday, relative calm has been restored in Nairobi.
I support NASA, and all I was supposed to do was to vote and leave the rest to the politicians. Because if I were to boycott work today, those guys won't pay my bills. So if I boycott work, what will I say in the evening? Or maybe if NASA joins the government, maybe I may get a job. It doesn't work that way. So I would advise others that unless you have permission from your employer, then you better get to work.
NASA is not going to pay for our bills. I don't think it's a good move for them to tell people to go to work. Actually, even right now, we have been out of business for the last 1 week. So it is like adding injury into whatever we are going through. So I think they should tell people, go back to work and wait for their next move.
Well, let's discuss this further with political analyst Daisy Amdani. She's the Executive Director of the Community Advocacy and Awareness Trust. Daisy, thank you for joining us on the link. Now, this whole situation now where Kenya finds itself, what's your take on the opposition's refusal to accept defeat, and why exactly haven't they come out with evidence, if at all they have any evidence?
Well, I think it's very unfortunate that the opposition has refused to go to court, because in any election, you will have winners and you will have losers. And we need to encourage people to use the confines of the law to lodge their disputes. When you have a situation where a very prominent leader like the Right Honorable Raila Odinga says that he's not going to court, you begin to impute some kind of, a lack of transparency on the part of the courts, which is not good towards building our institutions. As for the evidence, everybody is waiting for this evidence. There are allegations that the election has been stolen, and we are saying, you need to be able to prove your case. You cannot engage in running battles. We cannot act outside the law in the name of enforcing the law.
And that is what many people are asking. What next, though? Because the opposition has said it is not going to pursue the legal channels. It is not going to go to court, but it has other options. What options are those?
Well, the only other options is the kind of chaos that we have been seeing, and the country is on tenterhooks, which is very unfair, because the law is there to protect everybody, and the law is there to protect even them. If they feel that they have been duly denied a victory, then let them take their matter to court and prove, show, give the evidence. And the courts also have a threshold for being able to adjudicate these matters. But if you decide that you do not want them to act within the confines of the law, unfortunately, states are governed by law. Then you will have to meet with the force of the law.
Now, the opposition leader has called on the public to stay away from work today. We have seen many people going to work, going about their work as normal. What is the effect of that stay away from work on the people, and what next for Kenya in the coming days?
The biggest tragedy of this is many of those people who are being asked to stay away from work depend on that work for their livelihood. It's already been about 2 weeks of the nation being on tenterhooks. People have lost money, people are losing opportunity, and it's not working well for our country. So I think it's unfortunate. These are unfortunate remarks, but I'm glad to see that Kenyans haven't heeded that and that they've gone on to work, because I think people really do understand that they have a responsibility to themselves, and it's unfair for the opposition to actually call upon people to deny themselves when they've done their part. They've done their part. They've voted. So you do your part and observe the law and take up this matter with the other channels, because the constitutionally mandated body, the IEBC, has already declared an outcome in this matter. The only other avenue is to go to court.
So the IEBC has already, the Independent Electoral Commission has already declared a winner to this presidential race. So what are the options for the government here?
The options for the government are very clear. I mean, the law is very clear. Anybody who is not satisfied with the outcome has up to 14 days within which that they will file a petition before the Supreme Court with the presidential, when it comes to the presidential results. Now, if the opposition chooses not to take that route, then they must let the nation move on. They cannot hold us back simply because they are unhappy and they refuse to use the channels that are laid down within the law. So while we sympathize, and it must be very difficult losing an election, but you can't take the entire nation with you on this journey, because the nation has refused to go on this journey. Remember that there's equally a large number of people who also voted differently, and there's also a large number of people who didn't vote. So to hold us hostage simply because you're unhappy with an outcome and then you refuse to observe the law in resolving your disputes, I think that is really, you know, being very unfair to the nation and very unfortunate. And for the caliber and the stature of leader that the opposition leader is, I think he owes the country better than this.
So a very final comment here. Daisy, the economy is already suffering. The economy has suffered over the last 2 weeks prior to this election. And now with this stay away boycott that the opposition is calling for, and of course with the uncertainties of what next for the country. So many are going to be asking, what next for Kenya?
Well, I think Kenya is on a good trend because, interestingly enough, while we may say that while the economy has suffered because people haven't been working, but look at the Kenya shilling. The Kenya shilling has held strong, you know, throughout this period, which means that people have confidence in the Kenyan economy. So let us now make our positive contribution. That is the cost of a competitive election. You win some, you lose some. But this is our country. We have a duty and a responsibility to contribute positively towards the growth of our country. So let's move on into the new chapter that has been opened by this, you know, the declaration by the IEBC, and let's see what happens. I think better days ahead for Kenya.
Better days ahead for Kenya. Your words, Daisy Amdani. Thank you very much for joining us on the link. Well, Zhao Yang, the opposition leader, has said that he will be issuing a statement tomorrow, Tuesday, on the way forward for his supporters. We'll be monitoring that decision very closely for you. Back to you, Zhao Yang.